Tommy didn't hear what the men were saying, but he realized that this stranger might be his salvation. The boy began to bang furiously on the attic window and shout that he was there. Alas, the stranger did not hear him. Tommy opened his backpack and pulled out a box. That was his last delivery for the day. He was hoping Mr. Hannokin would tip. When Tommy was 19, he always wanted to eat because most of his earnings were taken by his adoptive parents. Besides, Tommy was trying to save from his meager wages. Mr. Hannokin looked like a man of wealth, his clothes and the house furnishings. The man grabbed the parcel impatiently, and there was a suspicious noise inside. Mr. Hannokin frowned and opened the box. There was a lot of shrapnel inside it. Someone deliberately smashed the contents of the package with a hammer. Tommy turned pale with fear. "Boy, do you know how much this vase was worth?" asked Mr. Hannokin. "Your life won't pay that much." Tommy was always the unlucky guy. He remembered that he was happy long ago, but it was in his childhood when he lived with his mother. But unfortunately, she died early. Tommy didn't remember her face at all, but he did place the warm hands, the scent of perfume, and her cheerful voice. "God has a wonderful parcel for you," she said when they were lucky in something. When there were a few failures, his mother said, "The parcel from God has not yet reached the address." After Tommy's mother died, he went to the orphanage, but was there for a short time. One day, a married couple, Mr. and Mrs. White, came to the orphanage. They took not only Tommy out of the orphanage, but 2 more boys and 1 girl. They chose very carefully and for a long time. Tommy didn't like the new parents' behavior. At first, the couple treated the children well, but as soon as the children grew up and were able to work, everything changed. The White family lived on a farm. They kept horses, goats, and poultry. They needed the children as a free labor force. To do this, the spouses took from the orphanage the children, who seemed to them the strongest and most enduring. Since childhood, the White couple had been busy with their adopted children. At the same time, the adoptive parents constantly told the children how lucky they were to be taken away from the orphanage, and that they would grow up as human beings. Tommy had gone from being a chubby, handsome boy to a skinny, stubby little guy. He was always looking over his shoulder, waiting to be beaten by his stepfather. His white skin had grown brown from constant exposure to the sun and poor washing. Hard calluses appeared on his legs because the children did not wear shoes in the summer and ran barefoot. Hands were constantly stained, or chicks from work with dirty water. It wasn't pleasant for the kids there. Despite his hard life, Tommy was very fond of reading. They did not send their adopted children to school, but Mrs. White taught them literacy basics. She taught them simple arithmetic and lesson. Tommy was allowed to use the home library. Although Mr. White was dissatisfied with Tommy reading a lot, Mrs. White insisted that he not touch the boy for reading. Although she supported her husband, she was not as cruel as her husband. "Do you want to go blind from books?" Mr. White grumbled and took another book from Tommy. Tommy was silent, though sometimes he thought it better to go blind than to see the ugly face of his adopted father. But the books distracted Tommy from his dark thoughts and drove him away from the scary reality. The boy learned many new things. Alas, there was no question of Tommy going to school or college. Tommy sometimes thought about running away, but where would he run to? He did not know his mother's family. She never told him if they had relatives. Now there was no one to ask. Tommy was afraid to talk to strangers because his adoptive parents would scare their ward with tales of how scary people were behind the farm. But one of the children thought otherwise and one day tried to escape. Of course, he was caught. Mr. White beat the boy severely and threw him into the building where the inventory was kept. The adoptive father closed the building and threatened the children not to look there and bring nothing to the culprit, no food or water. The frightened children did not dare to contradict. Tommy walked around the building and listened. There was only wheezing. Tommy decided and secretly brought the boy water, but his brother was so beaten that he could neither drink nor eat. After a while, the battered boy was quiet, and Tommy was scared. He realized that his brother had died, and tears covered his eyes. The terrible cry of his stepfather made him colder. Tommy hurriedly wiped his tears with his fist. "Tommy, where are you, you lousy piece of shit?" Mr. White was looking for Tommy. The boy snuck out of the building and pretended to come out from the other side. "I'm here, Father." "Tommy, you're out here. You're coming with me," said Father. But first, he opened the building and looked inside. Mr. White saw the beaten boy had died. The man slammed the door shut. Mr. White grabbed Tommy's shoulder painfully and dragged him towards the house. "Where are we going?" asked the boy. "None of your business. You need to sit quietly in the attic and come down only when I say so." The boy did not contradict. He realized long ago that any word against turns into a beating. Moreover, he was terrified of the death of his brother. Mr. White locked Tommy in the attic, and Tommy snuck into the attic window to see what was happening. He saw a car pull up to the house and a well-dressed man come out. Mr. White was very courteous to him. The men greeted him. "I'm here for Tommy. I'm told your family adopted him," said the man. "Oh yes, we've been warned," said Mr. White. "But I'm afraid you're too late." "What happened?" the man asked alarmingly. "He had an accident, volunteered to help us on the farm, and horses trampled on him. Tommy died." After a few years, Tommy grew up. Despite the meager food and occasional beatings, he became a handsome guy with piercing gray eyes. His brother and sister stayed on the farm, and Tommy begged his adoptive parents to send him to town to make money. Mr. White did not want to let his adopted son leave the farm, but his wife supported him and insisted that he had to go to work. To avoid leaving the boy unsupervised, Mr. White arranged for him to stay with his cousin. Tommy and Jack worked in delivery. Jack worked as if he were doing his time. Yes, the young man was prone to an idle lifestyle, and his father wanted to re-educate him. He arranged for an arrogant son to be placed in the most specific and lowest paid position. Jack tried to take the lightest orders to avoid bothering them too much. But Tommy took any job. He was used to working hard on the farm with his stepfather, so his current job didn't seem that hard. Although sometimes there were so many orders, Tommy would come home, eat, and fall asleep almost immediately. At least his cousin Jack had time to have fun and party all night. His uncle often used Tommy as an example, and Jack did not like it. He hated Tommy and tried to insult, frame, or humiliate him in every way. "Hey, Tommy," he said, "take another shower. The farm smell is still on you." Tommy tried to ignore Jack, but not only did Jack hurt Tommy himself, but he also encouraged his fellow couriers to harass him. They hid his ordering boxes so that Tommy would be late to order and reprimanded. Tripped him up, insulted him. Tommy held back as much as possible because he knew any conflict would be an excuse to get him back to the farm. More than anything, Tommy didn't want to go back to where he'd spent his unhappy childhood. Jack's father tried to stop these antics. But first of all, he was always preoccupied with more important things. Secondly, Tommy was not related to him. From his cousin, Mr. White knew precisely how much Tommy made, and demanded that he give up most of his earnings and keep only the smallest part. He always told the guy he owed him a lot because he was taken from the orphanage, fed and watered. It was only because of his foster parents that he was worth something. Tommy didn't think so, but he was still afraid to contradict. He was worried not only about himself, but of his brother and sister who stayed at home. Because if he goes out of his way, Mr. White will take it out on the rest of us. Tommy was so excited when his clients got their packages and tipped him. No one knew about the money, and Tommy was saving up a little to disappear from his adoptive parents' lives once and for all and take his brother and sister. One day his uncle, watching the heavy box Tommy was carrying, said with envy, "My cousin made Tommy a good man, but my son is no good." When Tommy heard what his uncle said, he turned pale and barely held the box in his hands. The memories of his brutal upbringing and dead brother returned to him. Suddenly, he turned to his uncle. Believe me, mister, it's better for Jack to never experience the proper education. Uncle looked at the young man with surprise. Tommy realized that his boss didn't know how the White family was raising foster kids and that he was using them as free labor. But Tommy said nothing to his uncle. Who would believe him? One day, his uncle called Tommy. I have an essential errand for you. I cannot entrust this package to my son or his friends. At least I can rely on you, said the uncle. Sure, mister, said Tommy. His uncle handed him a small box tightly sealed. This is valuable cargo for Mr. Hannokin. The address is there. I'm sure you can handle it. I'll make it right, said Tommy. Tommy came out of the office with a valuable box. Unfortunately, Jack heard the conversation. He was furious that his father was unflattering about his son. In addition, Jack wanted to hurt Tommy badly. He called his friends and whispered something to them. The courier's friends dove according to the nod. Hey, Tommy, said Jack. Tommy didn't want to look back. He was in a hurry to see the client and was afraid for his box. I don't have time, Jack. I have a lot of work to do, said Tommy. Tommy, you're overthinking me. I just wanted you to help me as a friend. Will you help me? Jack asked. Tommy hesitated. On one hand, he had to fulfill the order. On the other, he wanted to reconcile with Jack. How can I help you? Tommy asked. Help me carry the box over there. I can't do it alone, said Jack, pointing to the enormous box in the warehouse. Tommy carefully placed his valuable cargo and went after Jack. While the boys were hauling a big box, Jack's friend stole Tommy's order and opened it. There was a beautiful vase, apparently very expensive and ancient. One of Jack's friends took a hammer and broke the vase into pieces. Then they resealed the box and put it back. Tommy left with his commission, and Jack and his buddies laughed, imagining how Tommy would get in trouble. It'll be a surprise, said Jack. Tommy's going to cry and say it's not him, picked up one. But no one will believe him, said the second. Tommy did not suspect anything and brought the package to Mr. Hannokin. When the man opened the door, Tommy was surprised. Somehow he thought he'd seen this man's face before. But in a short period, Tommy saw so many people in town that he could easily confuse one with the other. Tommy was handing out a package and thinking about tips when the crash happened. The man opened the parcel, and he saw the vase in the box had been mercilessly smashed. Tommy knew instantly whose work it was, but what could he prove? Boy, do you know how much this vase was worth? Asked Mr. Hannokin. Your life won't pay that much. But if the loss of an ancient vase saddened Mr. Hannokin, then Tommy was mentally bidding farewell to the city, the dream of getting out of the farm from his abusive foster parents. The parcel from God didn't reach the addressee, blurted Tommy, saying his mother's favorite tale. What did you say? What did you say? Mr. Hannokin asked suddenly in a shriveled voice. I'm sorry, mister. It just popped out, said Tommy. Repeat the phrase, said the man. The parcel from God didn't reach the addressee, said Tommy. My mother said when things didn't work out. Mr. Hannokin seemed to have forgotten about the package, about the vase, and he grabbed the guy's shoulder, looking up at his face. Tommy, you're Tommy, he suddenly asked. Tommy looked at the man again and realized that he had seen him since his brother died. Yes, I remember. You came. Tommy, I was looking for you. And Helen, your mother. My sister was too proud, and when her fiancé left her, she didn't want us to know. It was too late when she died. I found the orphanage, but you were sent. I found a foster family, but they told me you were dead, and even showed me the body. That was my brother's body. Mr. White killed him. What a terrible thing. Mr. Hannokin grabbed his head. What you've been through, Tommy. Mr. Hannokin showed the family photos, so Tommy saw his mother's face for the first time, because he didn't remember her. Going back to the farm was out of the question. Mr. Hannokin, with his connections and money, helped not only Tommy, but also his foster brother and sister. Tommy made up for the gaps in his studies and went to college, because he always had the ability and the craving for knowledge. Despite the objections of his uncle, Tommy continued to work as a courier. He was not interested in sedentary life and partying. Sometimes he would take a picture of his mother and say to her, "God has a wonderful package for you. I have everything well, and I love you, Mother."